Part 4. The Ray of Hope. The silence of the burned forest seemed endless. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The sky brought rain, but it only turned the ashes into mud. The sun shone, but it only revealed the black scars of trees and the lifeless ground. The animals grew weaker. Many had lost hope, believing the paradise they once knew could never return. One morning, after a night of heavy rain, the first sign of change appeared. On the edge of the ruined clearing, where the fire had once burned the fiercest, a small green sprout pushed through the ashes. It was fragile and tiny, no taller than a finger, yet it shone with life. Its leaves were soft and delicate, but in their color was the promise of tomorrow. The first to notice was a young deer. Tired and weak, she bent her head to the ground, expecting to find nothing but dust. Instead, she saw the little sprout trembling in the wind, yet refusing to fall. Her eyes widened, and she called softly to the others. Soon, the animals gathered around, staring at the tiny green life. For a long time, none of them spoke. Their hearts were heavy with disbelief. Could such a fragile thing really survive in a land of ashes? But the sprout stood tall, as if to say, "Yes, I am here. The fire is past, but life remains." The parrots, who had been silent for months, let out soft chirps. The monkeys leaned closer, curious, their eyes lighting up with something they had not felt in a long time, wonder. Even the elephants, who had carried the greatest sorrow, lowered their trunks gently to the ground, touching the sprout with care, as if protecting it. The wise old owl, perched above on a broken branch, looked down at the scene. His eyes gleamed softly. He had known that life would return, but even he had not expected it so soon. He spoke in his calm voice, "Life is patient. Even in the darkest of times, it waits. This little sprout is the forest's promise that all is not lost." The animals listened. For the first time since the fire, they felt something stir within their hearts. It was small and fragile, just like the sprout, but it was powerful. It was hope. As days passed, the rain continued to fall, and the sprout grew taller. Soon, others began to appear. Tiny shoots of grass broke through the black soil. Small flowers lifted their heads, their petals shy but determined. The forest floor, once a desert of ash, began to show patches of green. The animals watched with amazement. The deer found tender leaves to eat, the parrots nibbled at new berries, and bees slowly returned to collect nectar from the first blooming flowers. Frogs croaked again by the ponds, and dragonflies darted above the water. Life, little by little, was returning. The change was not only in the forest, but in the animals themselves. Their voices, once heavy with sorrow, began to lighten. The monkeys played again, though not as wildly as before. The birds tested their songs, their melodies shaky at first, but soon stronger. The elephants trumpeted softly, their sounds carrying a new strength, a strength born from survival. Still, the scars of the fire remained. Many trees stood black and broken. The rivers were not as clean as before, and food was still scarce. The animals knew they could not simply wait for the forest to heal itself. They had to help. One evening, as the sun set in gold and red, the wise old owl called the animals together. His voice was steady and clear. "My friends, the forest has shown us its will to live, but it cannot rise alone. If we wish to see our paradise again, we must work together. Every one of us has a part to play." The animals listened carefully. At first, some were doubtful. They were tired, weak, and unsure if they had the strength to rebuild. But then they looked around at the green shoots, at the little flowers pushing through the ashes, and they realized that even the smallest seed could find the strength to rise again. The elephants were the first to step forward. "We will bring water from the rivers," they said, spraying it over the dry soil to help new plants grow. The parrots promised to carry seeds far and wide, dropping them into the earth with their beaks. The monkeys offered to gather fallen fruits and spread their seeds across the land. Even the deer, gentle and quiet, said they would tread carefully, so as not to harm the new sprouts and help protect them from being eaten too soon. Every animal found a task. The tigers and wolves, once feared as hunters, promised to guard the young plants from being destroyed. The bees and butterflies returned to carry pollen from flower to flower, ensuring that new life would spread. Even the smallest ants worked tirelessly, moving seeds into the ground, unknowingly planting the future. Together, they began the work of healing. Day by day, little by little, the forest started to change. Where once there was only silence, now there was the sound of effort, the splash of water from elephants, the chatter of parrots as they dropped seeds, the rustle of monkeys carrying fruits, the hum of bees flying from flower to flower. It was not easy. Many days were still hard. Food was limited, and the work was tiring. Some animals grew discouraged, feeling the task was too great. But whenever despair returned, they looked at the little sprout, the first sign of hope, and remembered how it had stood tall even in the ashes. If a tiny plant could survive, so could they. As weeks passed, the change became clear. The ground was no longer black, but dotted with green. Small trees began to grow, their branches reaching upward. Flowers painted the land with color: red, yellow, blue, and white. The rivers, slowly cleansed by rain and time, began to sparkle again, and fish returned to dance in their waters. The forest was not yet what it had been, but it was no longer a graveyard. It was alive once more, breathing, singing, and healing. The animals gathered one evening beneath the first young tree that had grown tall enough to cast a shadow. They rested in its shade, and for the first time since the fire, they felt peace. The owl looked at them and spoke. "Remember this, my friends. Fire may destroy, but it cannot defeat life. As long as we hold hope in our hearts, the forest will always return." The animals lifted their heads. Their eyes shone brighter than before, not only with hope, but with determination. They had learned a truth that night. The forest was not just their home. It was part of them, and together they would bring it back. The ray of hope had become a flame of courage.